No, it's weird.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Gio and Joey show with a special guest on today. Joey, how you doing? And introduce our guest for us.
I'm doing better than I deserve. My guest is someone I had a pleasure of meeting when I was in D.C. for a recent Young Americans for Freedom student, or whatever they call it, summit. And I thought he would be interesting to have on because he's currently running to be the youngest state senator in California electoral history, and he's a conservative, and he's a Republican. And before I introduce him, I just want to, I'm not saying anything, but, you know, the last Republican to win a landslide presidential victory was also a California conservative. So, in a decade or so, you never know what might happen. But no, so the person's Elijah Mack. So how you doing, Elijah?
Doing great, yeah. Yes, like you said, I'm running currently at the age of 19 to become California's youngest ever state senator. To my knowledge, I'd be the youngest ever state legislator, actually. I've been digging through the records for the state assembly. They had some young candidates, back in the 1800s. But potentially, yeah, I could be on the track to become California's youngest ever legislator. And so my district that I'm in is District 21. And so if anyone out there, the majority of people watching probably aren't going to be, legislative nerds to the degree I am. So that district is Santa Barbara County, Ventura County, outside of like Westlake and Simi Valley, if any of you guys watching are familiar with that area. Then southern San Luis Obispo County, about 1 million people in my district.
So let me ask you a question, right? You're 19 years old. Most 19-year-olds are trying to chase chicks and smoke weed. What got you into politics? And not only into politics, but the fact that you want to actually run for a seat.
Yeah. So I was raised in a very, very conservative family. My dad, at the time that I was born, was a very conservative Methodist minister. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and I have some very fond memories of hearing Rush Limbaugh playing in the background while my mom was cleaning the house and things of that nature. So I just sort of grew up in that environment. And then if anyone has any question of my the political aspect of my upbringing, I'll just let you know that my middle name is Reagan. It's not a family name named after the president. So that's just the environment I grew up in. Just a very conservative political environment. And so when I was about 12 years old, I decided that as soon as I was 18, I wanted to run for some sort of office. And going through high school, I was sort of that weird kid who was really into like watching live streams of Congress and the state Senate and state assembly, like C-SPAN and stuff. Mm-hmm. Politics was my sport in that regard. And so, it just developed over time into me being very active in groups like Young Americans Foundation. I've been to probably 17 or so of their high school and college conferences. I've worked with the Libertarian Party and the Republican Party. I've attended a few state and national conventions for the Libertarian Party. I founded a classical environmentalist caucus of the Libertarian Party. I was the vice chair of the California State Libertarian Youth Caucus. So I got as involved in politics as I possibly could without being able to actually run for office until I was 18, when I started looking for a legislative race to run for. And then sort of that's how my campaign developed from there.
Awesome. So what do you tell young people in this political climate, you yourself being young, to get involved, to not just put it off, that their vote actually counts, and to make a difference?
Yeah. So, when it comes to getting people just to get out and vote, really, you pull up some of the statistics on, the voter turnout in a lot of states and a lot of areas of our country, and you can see that if the individuals who just feel like they're powerless and just feel like they don't want to vote, if they actually came out to vote, they could swing elections on a huge scale. They could elect, the best possible individuals for all sorts of statewide and regional races that people neglect when they don't actually come out to vote. And so part of it is, it really requires very little to just get out there on election day or fill out your mail-in ballot and just, chuck it in there. So you might as well. You might as well just get your voice out there, even if you feel just politically disenfranchised, even if you feel like everyone on there, you're just trying to find the lesser of two evils. You're benefiting. You're benefiting your culture and you're benefiting the state if you, just get out there and put your name there just in terms of voting. When it comes to running for office and getting politically active, part of what my campaign is about is showing young people who want to, be the change they want to see in politics that really, if the amount of time they have on their hands is permissive, if they've gotten, completed their education or able to, manage dealing with education and political office, there's really nothing stopping them from throwing their hat in the ring. There's nothing to lose but the time and energy that goes into that. If it's so many people feel like, I don't have all these years of political experience, I don't have a law degree, I don't have this or this, I can't run for office. You can. And I'd like to assure people that a lot of those that are in office who have all these credentials showing how they're able to do so, those credentials just mean they're good at writing bad legislation efficiently, with as little help from legislative assistants and things like that as possible. So, really there's nothing stopping young people from being the change they want to see in their political environments.
I got one more question, Joey, before I let you jump in here. You remember, being that your middle name is Reagan, that old clip that goes around this time of the year where he says, I'm not going to use age in this campaign. I'm not going to let the youth and inexperience of my opponent, determine the race. So how do you answer that question, right? If somebody tries to throw that at you, hey, you're young, you're inexperienced, how do you answer that?
Yes, what it sort of comes down to is what I was sort of mentioning a moment ago. Look at California state legislators, for example, particularly the Democrats. A lot of these individuals are sort of just figureheads. They have all this political experience or these credentials, this education that makes it look like, they're going to do a good job in office. But really what it comes down to is their party is providing them the legislation they're going to put forth. They're told how to vote on these issues. Their legislative staff is doing the brunt work of writing all this legislation. So really you're not voting for an individual in a lot of these races. You're voting for the principles that they hold. What really matter are the principles of how, that will dictate how they vote in the legislature, and that will dictate, the type of legislation they produce. And so if I've been trying to, get people to understand that also, as I said, political experience in politics and having a big law degree or something of that nature ultimately just means that if you're a politician who has bad principles, it just means you can produce bad legislation really efficiently. And so I've been trying to, get that message out there because ultimately, in these sorts of situations, age doesn't matter, experience doesn't necessarily matter in certain offices. What matters in many cases are the ideologies and principles that candidates hold.
Yep, no doubt. Principles don't change, right? Regardless of whether you're 19, 51, 71, if you have solid principles, they're going to be solid throughout everything you put your mind to do. And so, yes, good answer. Joey?
Yeah, so my first question would be, it's kind of the elephant in the room, no pun intended, that we're Republicans. But the elephant in the room is that for most conservatives, a lot of times it's kind of common to hear California, just get out, right? Like it's a lost cause, right? Everything's terrible. And yet you're not doing that route, right? Like you're running for office. So what would you say to conservatives who kind of feel disillusioned about the state of, maybe they're not in California, maybe they're in Maryland, maybe they're in Minnesota, the one state that even the Gipper couldn't win, or whatever. Like they're in some of these blue states and they just feel disillusioned or like they just got to move. How would you inspire them to say, no, you can make a difference even in a blue state as a conservative?
Yeah. So there's two things I'd like to say when it comes to that. First of all, there are situations where it's legitimate that, the political environment here and the economic environment here is just, a lot of individuals just can't survive in that environment, especially if they're trying to raise families. Or if they're very young and they're trying to be upwardly mobile, and the economy here is just, they're paying, $1,000 a month for half a room, and they're working a job that's $15, $16 an hour. Their hours are getting cut. It can become an environment where it just makes sense to lead the state in order to be upwardly mobile. And so for a lot of individuals, I understand where they're coming from, and I'm not going to call them like scabs or something. I'm not going to tell them they're just abandoning the state. But for many individuals, it's also valid to stick around here. Individuals who can't afford it, individuals who are surviving, they just feel like the political environment's very bad. There is hope because, in the state of California, there are a great deal of conservatives. The state, believe it or not, is, go anywhere in the state and the chances are you're going to have at least, 30% conservatives. And given the voter registration statistics and the voter turnout in a lot of these races, if we can get Republicans to turn out more and be far more, active in politics on their local levels, we could be seeing a California where various areas of the state have very local city councils, county supervisor boards, a lot of conservative legislative districts. So although the majority of California is Democrat and the cities here are going to be Democrat for as indefinitely into the future, we can create environments in California that are, very comfortable for conservatives. And so there is hope in that regard. And lastly, I'd also mention races like mine, where I'm a Republican. My platform is fully based on just conservative principles, but I'm able to speak to moderates and softer Democrats in my area in language that they can understand and feel, it makes my platform seem quite approachable to them. And so there are races like mine where, the last individual running against my opponent got about 33% of the vote in the primaries, 35% in the general. I already got almost 40% in the primaries, and I'm projecting potentially to make about 45%, maybe more in the general. So there are races like mine that sort of, because of the nature of the campaign, me running to be the youngest ever state senator, or their platform, or the ability for a candidate's ability to really talk to independents and moderates and things like that, that could get our state moving in the right direction, even in districts like mine that are about 60% Democrat. So there is hope for the state. And my advice is for people to, stick around as long as it's economically viable. Really try to work to help the culture in the state rather than, just run out and abandon it even when it's not necessary. But I'm not going to demonize people who just can't, deal with it any longer in terms of the affordability and things of that nature, because that's a very real issue.
Yeah, I've never liked the argument. It's never sat well with me that we should just leave. I'm from Michigan. We're more of a purple state. We've had Republican leadership a lot more than California has. But right now, the Democrats are in ascendancy. But this idea that I'm going to abandon my home, I'm going to abandon the Great Lakes state, or we're going to abandon, the beauty of California, or our capital or whatever to the left, and just not put up a fight. No, this is all of our country, and we shouldn't have to have a politically segregated society. So bringing it to, so I read over your website and your platform, and there was a couple things that stuck out at me in a positive sense that are different than typical Republicans. For one, your emphasis on the environment, on sustainable agriculture, on these things, on a kind of, I would call it, maybe if we don't want to use the word environmentalism because the left or whatever, but a very conservationist type platform, kind of the positive side of Teddy Roosevelt. So what inspired you for that to be a major plank? And is that kind of a good wedge issue for even, like you were saying, appealing to some of the Democrats and stuff in your district?
Yeah. So firstly, I'd like to say it is absolutely a necessary issue that a lot of conservatives should talk about in order to get, not just to get the votes of moderates and independents, just to lie and, make ourselves appear more environmentalist, but not actually do anything in that policy when we get elected. But it's something that we do need to do as a party, is to get, provide some answers to environmental questions. Because if you look at the polls for Gen Z voters, the number one issue is always climate change. And as long as we're just going to dismiss environmental issues as a whole, or unfortunately, like in Trump's debate with Kamala, the environmental issue, environmental question or the climate change question came up and he just changed the subject. We need to be able to provide some answers to the issues that are, compatible with our conservative principles and compatible with free market principles and things of that nature. And so there are organizations that are sort of pushing for that, like the American Conservation Coalition. They're advocates for nuclear energy and things of that nature within conservatism as a truly renewable, efficient, cost-effective form of energy production. I also consider myself, not only do I advocate personally for nuclear energy and California investing in its nuclear infrastructure, but I'm also an advocate for regenerative agriculture and organic agriculture and things of that nature. And I'm similar in many regards to RFK Jr., and I very much, and his environmental policy. And I'm very much a fan of the Make America Healthy Again platform, So the Political Action Committee for Make America Healthy Again, out of the sort of unity between Trump and RFK recently, they produced a platform that's very just traditional American conservationism, has an emphasis on freeing the agriculture markets to promote regenerative agriculture, promoting nuclear energy and things of that nature. That I think a lot of conservatives need to hop on the bandwagon of, because I do believe in man-made climate change. I do believe in all sorts of man-made environmental issues. But I believe that free market principles and conservative principles offer much better solutions, much more effective solutions than what the Democrats are offering. The Democrats are using environmental issues as a guise to push for left-wing economic policy and restructuring our infrastructure to suit their interests. But our solutions, for example, regenerative agriculture, I was watching a documentary that I recommend called Common Ground, if anyone's watched it. It's more left-wing coded. They know their audience, but they talk about regenerative agriculture. And one of the statistics they mention is that if regenerative agriculture was, implemented on a large scale in the United States, it could offset potentially completely our carbon emissions due to natural carbon entrapment and bring us to net zero. So that sort of golden calf of left-wing environmentalists of net zero that they use to justify all these economic reforms and things of that nature, putting out arbitrary deadlines for phasing out gas vehicles, that could be achieved, so to speak, by freeing the agriculture markets and putting some reforms in on the farm bill and things like that. And the Democrats don't want to go for those easy solutions because those involve freeing the markets, being more economically liberal, not supporting their left-wing economic interests. And so we have solutions to environmental issues as conservatives and libertarians that we can absolutely smoke the left on. And so we need to get, preach that a bit more. So that's, I hope that answers any questions that you had about that sort of subject. And if there's anything else you want to ask about my platform or anything like that, that'd be.
Yeah. So before you jump in there, Joey, I want to point out, because look, I think I agree with you that there are things that humanity is doing to the planet that we shouldn't be doing. And me being a minister, I get that from the fact that the book of Revelation talks about that the Lord is going to come back to destroy those who destroy the earth. But I agree once again with you 100% that the solutions by the left are not good. I mean, they really don't care about the earth. They're just using it as a power grab. And I'm glad that you are looking for ways to be both conservative, responsible, and yet caring for the planet, because often I see too many Republicans who think because they don't like the solutions the left offers that climate change or the things we're doing to their environment isn't legit. And so I commend you for that, and I hope more people resonate with that, because we do affect the environment. We just have to get good solutions for it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then like I said, conservative environmentalism is developing a lot. There are thinkers like Alex Epstein. He has some good arguments against left-wing environmentalism, but his philosophy is fundamentally one that's not conservative or Christian. So we need to develop some environmental and sort of quote naturalist lowercase n views on these issues that are more holistic to our conservative principles. Because you look at individuals like Alex Epstein, his view is basically that nature is disgusting, terrible, hellish, and he likes to live in serene, urban artifice, and that rapid industrial progress and things like that are the definition of human flourishing. And his philosophy against left-wing environmentalism ultimately comes from the fact that, left-wing economic reforms in the name of environmentalism don't push for the economic development that happens in the free market. And so he's coming at it from a perspective of purely like, almost like a cartoonish caricature of a conservative. Like, I hate the environment. The Amazon has all these gross bugs. It's hot. It's gosh, I couldn't imagine living in there. Let's just mow the whole thing down, put a bunch of cows on it, and then make cheeseburgers. Cheeseburgers are yummy. Humans like them. That's human flourishing right there. So he has some good takes on on nuclear energy and counteracting left-wing environmentalism, but there's a lot of development to be done from the perspective of Christian conservatives in promoting tying in our traditionalist views into proper conservative environmentalist views. That's something I've also been trying to do in my campaign.
Okay, cool.
I feel like it's always been kind of a disconnect between this kind of owning the libs, right? Like reaction against their environment. And don't get me wrong, I do think the left has some wacky environmental views, but like this kind of owning the libs reaction versus like listen, I grew up in rural Southwest Michigan, right? The people, my neighbors, right? Like these are hunters and these are fishermen. These are people who have always cared about preserving the environment. And so like this caricature that's like, oh, we're just gonna, California wants to ban plastic. Well, guess what? I'm gonna take my plastic and throw it out to make it like that's not conservative. That's not Christian. That's I don't know. I feel like we need to get out of this defining our ideas and our things based on what the left says versus having our own principled stand. And I think preserving the earth, and that's why your platform plank there really jumped out at me in a positive way. I think that's the kind of thing that conservatives need to follow your cue, and hopefully, you're able to push that from Sacramento, and we're able to get that, the experiment in democracy there.
I mean, I'm a little older than both of you. Both of you can be my sons, but I remember growing up in Pennsylvania that you can take water from a creek and drink it. I wouldn't do that now, right? Because you don't know what is upstream from the water you're drinking from the creek. And so we do have to be responsible. Transitioning here a little bit, what are some of the... Go ahead, Joe.
I will just say, actually, because of some good policy, actually, I think it was the first Bush administration, the water actually may be cleaner now than when you were a kid. Because the Clean Water Act, I believe it was in the early 90s, that got passed. So like people always, sometimes that's one of the things where some positive government action actually can have some good effect. And so hopefully Elijah's able to get some more of that.
Transitioning here a little bit more to your platform, what are some of the major concerns in your district that made you want to run, to think you can bring the solutions to?
Yeah, so the issues in my district are much like the issues across California. And a lot of individuals in this state, left, right, and center, recognize that we have increasing cost of living, increasing unvetted immigration, increasing minor violent crime, things of that nature. Housing affordability, or really the ability to own property, is just out of the realm of possibility for a lot of individuals here. So the primary issues that a lot of individuals are concerned with in my district are economic issues that face the state as a whole. And so the sort of message that I try to bring about in my campaign is I'm advocating for what I like to call a new paradigm in California politics. It's not just, I'm not just trying to provide some solutions to issues in my district. I want to, try to change the political landscape in the state as a whole, with a sort of message and a platform where I'm advocating for unitive principles and common ground ideals. Now fundamentally, the principles that I'm advocating for in my platform are fundamentally conservative. So some would say, some have called them, moderate compared to more radical conservatives. But I'd say these are fundamentally conservative principles that stick to what unite sort of any, politically sane individuals from left, right, and center. And I want to advocate for a sort of environment where our legislators in the state of California are working towards an environment in which our economies, our communities, our culture, and environments can survive and thrive organically. Rather than be dependent on the overbearing government and a state government that's bought and sold by private interests. And once we get legislators on the track of trying to look for solutions that, like I said, help our economies thrive organically, help our culture thrive organically, rather than through positive intervention, so to speak, in the culture and the economy and the environment, we're going to see solutions to a lot of the issues our state faces as a whole. Once we get on that sort of mindset. And a lot of individuals, like I was saying, left, right, and center, see these issues in the state of California, and they recognize a very simple fact that the California state government, in our both houses of our legislature, Democrats hold a supermajority, and they've held the Democrat governor for years and years and years now. And in this entire time that they've been in this position, they've had absolutely no roadblocks in providing any solutions they want to any of the issues our state faces. Who's going to stop them? You have 13 Republicans or so, or 18 Republicans in the state assembly and like 8 in the state Senate. They're completely powerless against the supermajority. Anything the Democratic Party sets its mind on, it can achieve in this state. And so individuals recognize that, even if they don't feel like, it's the Democrats and we got to vote for the Republicans now, they recognize that at least a certain flavor of Democrat we have in our state government has just led us to failure as a state. And they recognize that voting for individuals like my opponent Monique Limon, is sort of a vote for the status quo. But then what does that make a vote for me? Because a lot of these individuals, they look at the label Republican, they see that the R next to my name on the ballot, and they immediately think, the Democrat means status quo, but Republican means worse, based on all the ideological trappings or the weight that's been placed on the label conservative or Republican by the media or even by Republicans in office who haven't done such a great job and ruined the name of the party. So the issue is, I'm trying to get out there, providing solutions to the issues we have in our state that, are free of any sort of ideological tags or partisan tags. I want to provide fundamentally conservative, libertarian principles on economic issues, cultural issues, environmental issues that individuals can feel are approachable and provide, no matter what their political ideology is, they feel that they're approachable and that they're safe because they are. And ultimately, if we can get individuals in California to vote based on policy and not on party, not just voting all down the line Democrat, but being able to vote for a Republican when they feel that the individual has a platform that suits them, we can start getting individuals in California to vote just more based on common sense policy across the board, and we can have a state and a political environment in our state that's much more sane and much more stable. So that sort of advocating for a new paradigm in California politics, it's the slogan of my campaign. And it's sort of the message that I'm trying to put across when it comes to providing solutions for the issues my district faces, which, like I said, are the issues our state faces as a whole.
Mm-hmm. So are you running against an incumbent or somebody fresh on the other side?
Yeah, so I'm running against an incumbent. This is, if she's elected this cycle, it would be her second term in office. Mm-hmm. And prior to that, she ran in the state. She worked in our state assembly, and prior to that, she was on, sort of teachers, school boards, things of that nature, local offices pertaining to education. And so she's one of those individuals where the state Democratic Party saw an individual who had a lot of name recognition in the area, who was well liked in her respective fields, and they sort of ran her for office and provided her with a platform, her with the policies that she'd advocate for. It's not as much, her personal touch isn't in there as much. It's mostly the Democrats. A vote for her is just a vote for the state Democrat Party. And for that reason, I mean, from what I've heard, she's a very nice person. We go to the same church. I've had conversations with her before. It's not as much an issue with any personal issues with her that I have. It's, the party that is writing the legislation she's putting forth, basically. And also because of that sort of situation, her party or her staff haven't given her permission to really debate me or go to any candidate forums where I was present. And so the tactic of the state party is that they're trying to just get her to win this without actually even really engaging in this race. She's sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars from corporate donors, and she hasn't spent a dime of it. And that is, ironically enough, that's likely going to be her path to victory, because she's not, if she gives me a platform, people will find out that there's a teenager running for state senate in their district, and they're going to look that guy up. They're going to read his platform. It draws intrigue. And so the best way she can, work for her race is to not accidentally advertise me in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. And from there, the voter registration in this area is only 24% Republican. So if she can just keep individuals from, researching my campaign, knowing that I'm even in existence, then she can just ride right through this race and get elected again. That's just the environment we have politically in this area of California.
Yeah, that's a shame because, it seems like there's I don't want to say big conspiracy, right? But the fact that a lot of those with money are left leaning, right? And so they just, like you say, pick their candidate and then ride their money to what they want. And so we need, by the grace of God, more conservative principles, more people like yourself running to try to at least give people the semblance of choice, right? To give people an opportunity to do something else besides the status quo. I mean, what's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Some of those things, and obviously better, you're there in California, but you see in the news from conservative outlets, the homelessness, the LA and all that, and the concerns, the running into stores and cash and grab or whatever they call it, grab and snag, or it's just horrific. Smash and grab. Thank you. And we need change. So when is the election? And go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm on the ballot for the November election, so I'm going to be right there with Donald Trump and all the national candidates, congressional candidates. But the ballots actually drop in my area or in my district. I believe there's one uniform date across the whole district. That is October 6th.
Okay.
And so a lot of people are just going to be, that's sort of going to be the soft election day, so to speak. A lot of people are just going to grab their ballots. They're going to, I'm voting Republican down the line, I'm voting Democrat down the line. That's going in. So the real race, when it comes to my advertising and things like that, really start, coming up to October right now, and then from October trying to grab who can be moved after that first state. So October 6th is the big date there. And I've been, so far, I've been relatively successful in reaching out to those individuals who can be swayed, so to speak. The state party sort of ties into what you were saying a moment ago when it comes to the funding issue. In the state of California, the Republican Party has no confidence in races like mine. It makes sense. I mean, they look at the voter registration in this area, and they figured we're not going to sink any money into this. And same goes for major donors. I've tried to reach out to major donors, to other state legislative candidates who have given money to Republicans, and just hear nothing back. And so I've only brought in about almost $4,000 this whole race running for the last year and a half. And so I've been using that money mostly on YouTube advertising and things like that, which is, YouTube advertising is really the way to go when it comes to digital advertising. It costs like 2 cents a view if you really, lock in the mechanics of it. And I've been able to get something like 8,000 full views on my videos over the past couple of weeks or so. So that's really what I've been trying to do, is just get my name out there like that through YouTube advertising. Getting on local TV and radio, getting my information for local news agencies and voter guides and things like that, and then just throwing that out there, seeing casting my seeds and seeing if it works out. But yeah, like I said, early October, when the ballots drop, that's when probably not the majority, but probably the plurality of voters will be voting. So that's sort of the soft election day coming up in my area.
Okay. So what have you been doing, though, to get the word out? Some door-to-door knocking, some forums? Give us a little bit of your strategy.
Yeah, so over the past year, I've really been trying to get to as much as I can across the board for getting my name out there. I've been, like I said, I've been on local TV and radio a few times. I've been door knocking in my area. My district has about 1 million people in it, so I can't possibly get all over the place. So I've been trying to get my materials to other candidates running for mayoral races, state assembly races in my district. I've gone to candidate forums and endorsement meetings. For all of them, I'm the only one, it's oftentimes just the Republicans turning up, because a lot of the Democrats in the area have the same strategy as my opponent, including Greg Hart, who's state assemblyman from my area. So me and the Republican candidate for state assembly, Sari Dominguez, we often find ourselves just alone at the podium for the state legislative races, and we get to get to put our 2 cents in. And so I was actually at a candidate forum a while ago run by the League of Women Voters. And so the audience was about, 70% Democrat. But what was very interesting was I had individuals coming up to me in like their N95 masks and their like progressive like slogan shirts. And they were, I don't know whether they were I don't think they were trying to like take my stock of materials, because it didn't take too many per person. But they're like, oh yeah, I want to take a couple of your signs. I'm going to put them up on my lawn. I'm going to take some of my materials and I'm going to look at it, hand them out to my friends. So I don't know what they saw on my platform. I mean, even though my platform is fundamentally, it's just common ground issues, but they seemed super progressive and they were interested in it. So, hey, they're voting for me. So, but like I said, the candidate forums are primarily just me and the Republican candidates getting our names out there. Primarily YouTube advertising, and like I said, is what I've put most of my money in lately. But prior to that, it's mostly been, precinct walking a little bit here and there, local TV and radio, submitting my information to local news agencies to see if they'll cover my race in any capacity. I ran a straw poll for state legislative races that nobody covered on. So really it's been maximizing all the free opportunities I have in my local area, just by the nature of the budget I'm working with of just a few $1,000s. Yeah.
Okay.
You might
and social media as well, of course. Yeah.
You might need to bring back an older form of politicking, like from the Lincoln Douglas days, where they would, if Douglas was coming to a city, Lincoln would show up, and that's where he'd host his thing, like outside the event of his opponent. So the people going, at least they had to cover, I don't know, but you're doing good work.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Your message resonates.
Yeah, so I could try that. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
Well, my opponent really only speaks at private donor events over in Montecito, like the rich area of town. So I could maybe park myself outside of someone's mansion and just yell at the cars going by. But I've tried to get to like stuff like that where Democrats are hosting like meet the public events, and try to like talk to them or talk to other people. But my opponent has remained pretty elusive. So sadly that tactic hasn't worked out too well.
So now I'm going to make an appeal to like the people of California.
Hey, Joey, you sound...
You want to be treated. No, I'm just like...
Hey, hold on, Joey. You sound a little low. Can you get closer to your mic or something?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Here's the thing. Like, democracy, right? Like, we're always hearing about threats to democracy. But my friend Justin Stapley from the Reagan caucus, like, he wrote an article a while ago. We were saying, is like, listen... it's also a threat to democracy when we stop engaging in the democratic process as a democratic process. Like the people of California, Democrat, independent, right, progressive, it doesn't matter. You should be offended when a politician just takes your vote for granted. Like you shouldn't want that. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't resonate with people, but I think it should. So definitely hope that whatever small part our podcast can play in getting your message out there, hope it resonates with people because people deserve to be wanted.
Yeah, I think that's the issue that the Democrats have been, to their credit, they've indoctrinated their people so well that, I mean, they can say anything or do anything and lead them anywhere and they still have their vote, which is why, at least in some places where I grew up in New York City, there is a minority uprising, meaning that many are going to vote against the Democratic establishment. Will it be sufficient to, turn a state? I would love to see California turn red in a presidential election or even the governorship, or in your case, your district, right? To shock the world, because I can't believe people will continue to vote for they've not literally, but in a way they've destroyed such a beautiful state, right? High taxes, liberal policies, the influx of illegal immigration. And it's sad. Me being Hispanic, people say that if you're against immigration, it's racist. No, I'm a Hispanic and I'm not against immigration. Just make it legal. Right? You can't flood cities and expect it to run smoothly. If people wanted to know more about your campaign, where's the best place to find you where they could read about your platform? Give the audience your info so they can, reach out.
Yeah. So my website that has my full platform on a wide variety of policies is www.mack, M-A-C-K, for State Senate. FOR instead of the number, so macforstatesenate.com. And so that, like I said, has my full platform, an introduction to who I am as a candidate, as well as a summary of my platform, what I'm about, and my overall, dream or my overall vision for this campaign and this sort of broader movement of getting individuals in California to vote based on policy, not on party, and focus on getting like I said, working towards an environment where economies, culture, environment can survive and thrive organically. And so, www.macforstatesenate.com. And then outside of that, my Twitter handle, which should be in the video right here, at Elijah for California. That's my main social media site. I also have a Facebook account under Elijah Mack. I believe there's a shorthand handle as well, and if there is one, it's the same as my Twitter. And so those are the main areas I get out there on social media. I also have a YouTube channel, which is just Elijah Mack as well. And so I have my campaign ads and stuff of that nature up there. If anyone wants to share them on social media, or just word of mouth is a very effective way in my area of getting voters to know who I am, as well as getting donations from in and out of my district. And also, of course, my website has donation buttons and things like that if anyone wants to donate. Even even $1, I'm running YouTube advertisements that cost like 2 cents each, so $1 is going to get out to 50 more voters. So if anyone wants to support me financially or anything of that nature, and if anyone's in my district by any chance and you want to volunteer, maybe help with door knocking in your district or getting my flyers out there, even just taking some of my printouts and sticking them on signposts around town, that's another effective way. Prior to the primaries, I didn't have any money in my campaign account for advertising, so I just print out some flyers, stuck them around telephone poles around the periphery of the downtown area of Santa Barbara. And I had people reading the signs, and I had Democrats emailing me after reading them, telling me that I'm the first Republican they're voting for. So even just, sticking some little signs like that around town, it helps. Yeah.
Yeah, every little bit helps. What's the future hold for you? Let's say, unfortunately, you don't win. Let's say, do you want to make a career out of this, or do you think this was just a moment of inspiration that you wanted to do something, but you don't know what the future holds?
Yeah, so definitely after this race, I'm absolutely sure I'm going to be very politically active throughout the rest of my life. Whether that means running for office again, it probably will. I'd also like to help the state party, California GOP. I'd like to somehow get on, any of their boards for messaging or marketing or things of that nature. I'm on track, if I get about 40% of the vote, to get the closest a Republican candidate in my area has gotten to retaking the Senate seat since it securely flipped blue. So if I can do that, I can show the state party and show Republicans, in general, that the messaging and the branding that I'm going for is messaging and branding that wins. It's the messaging and branding that at least flips voters, gets individuals in the middle willing to vote based on policy, not on party. But otherwise, I might be moving out of the state within the next couple of years, not because of the economic situation, but because I'm discerning going into seminary and pursuing ordination in the Anglican tradition. And so there's not a single theologically or politically conservative Anglican seminary anywhere near me, or Episcopal seminary. So I'd probably be going out to a seminary out in the Midwest. So if that's the case, I'll be politically active wherever I go. And in the Episcopal tradition, they allow priests to run for office, so I could run for office as an ordained minister. But I'm definitely probably going to run for office. But at the very least, I am going to try to help out my local state Republican Party however I can, help out local candidates, work on the messaging and marketing side of campaigns. Yeah.
Okay. With the few minutes we got remaining, let's take a bird's eye view and let's talk about, if you don't mind, the national race happening here. What are your thoughts on? Hold on, Joey. What are your thoughts on what's going on in the national race? But go ahead, Joey, since you want to jump in.
Well, it's about what he said, and I think it's important.
You sound low, brother. Get a real mic.
Use the word liberal, and I know what you mean, but make sure you explain to our audience the good kind of liberal that you're defending.
Yeah. So the term liberalism it's a long story how that became associated with progressivism. But classical liberalism ultimately just means free markets, economically liberal policies. Just letting it. There's also cultural liberalism, which doesn't even mean cultural progressivism necessarily. Just means letting individuals do as they will with their bodies and properties in terms of economic and personal activity, as long as they're not affecting other individuals or manipulating or defrauding other people or children or things of that nature. Classical liberalism is just free markets, more of a live and let live mentality. Classical liberalism is a philosophy on which our country was founded. Although liberalism is just a term that, as you said, is primarily associated with the bad kind of liberalism, progressivism. When it comes to the national races, personally, maybe it's just the environment that I'm in California, so I have a skewed view of things. But I do not have a lot of confidence in Donald Trump having a victory in November. There are ways I have research, as I'm sure many of individuals have, looking over all the voter registration data in the polls, where you could, potentially win. Everyone's looking at, Pennsylvania being the main state here, or potentially, the one electoral college vote from the congressional district in Nebraska. But, I personally feel like after the performance in his debate, even though the odds were stacked against him, his messaging and his marketing didn't really tide him through on that one. And Kamala's staff gave her, she sounded, even though nothing she was really offering was any real substance, she made herself sound very sane and moderate. And I feel like at least moderates and independents in my area who were truly, at least California-style moderates, who were watching that race and who were truly in the middle and undecided, I feel like there's no position they could have got out of that other than leaning towards Kamala. So my outlook on the race nationally isn't super optimistic. But when it comes to conservatives, when it comes to congressional and Senate issues, I'm a little bit more optimistic. I've personally been following Steve Garvey's campaign in California, even though he's probably not going to win. There are statewide policies that are quite conservative, like Prop 36, that could win. And if he can sort of ride on the coattails of some of those things, attach himself to them, if he can really make sure his marketing is really appealing to moderates and independents, he could get pretty close, relatively close as a California candidate could get. And so I've been watching some of those races, similar races across the country for Senate, and I'm optimistic when it comes to national legislative races, but the presidential race, I don't see a lot of ways it could work out in Trump's favor. That's just my overall outlook. And that could be, again, like I said, my position just living in California and being in this political culture. There could be states where, people are just focusing on, where people are starting to be like, the Democrats have kind of failed us. Even though if I'm not sure about Trump, I'm still going to go for him. We just need change. That could be environments in other areas. But from what I've seen, it's not looking too good.
Yeah, I think if it was any other candidate, this would be a landslide for the Republicans. But, even though he governed better than a lot of people thought he would in his 4 years, I think in a lot of times he's his worst enemy, right, with his rants and stuff like that. I mean, like you said, the debate didn't help him. That being said, there are some, voices I listen to that are saying that the debate, not that, like you said, I agree with you, she sounded presidential, even though she was just saying a lot of fluff. I think a lot of people were dissatisfied with ABC, right? And the stack that they seem to have against them. So who knows? I like you, though, I'm not very confident, but I think it's going to be a very close race, and that doesn't bode well for the country. In a way, I would love to see a landslide on either side, right? Just so there's closure and not this back and forth of was it stolen or not, and it's just for the sake of the country. But obviously, I would prefer conservative values.
Yeah. Hopefully, if Trump loses this race, it'll show the GOP what type of marketing and messaging they should avoid going forward, what isn't successful. And I hope that individuals like I was a big Ramaswamy fan when he was still in the running for presidential nomination. I hope figures like him can increase in prominence in the state in the national GOP. We can get some more of that sort of some messaging. He put on an excellent show in those primaries there. But hopefully from there, it could be a blessing for the GOP, because in certain ways, the GOP has sort of been riding on the popularity and the success of first Reagan and then Donald Trump. And once the popularity and the charisma or the positive connotations or the energy and the movement around one of those individuals starts to die down, it comes time, if the GOP wants to survive, they need another personality to come forward. And they can ride that from there. And so I think coming up soon, it could be time for another individual to prop up in prominence that could inspire some new life into the party, give them new messaging and new marketing while retaining fundamentally conservative principles, so that they can, survive in the new political climate and, claw our way back up to the prominence we once had. So overall, regardless of whether Trump wins or loses, if he wins, great. If he loses, hopefully the GOP can take what they've learned and, have a new individual come up into prominence that would be beneficial for the party as a whole.
Okay, as we wrap up here, let me ask you some fun questions, right? So outside of the fact that you are running for office, so what do you like to do to relax? What are some of the things that, get your mind off of the stress of a campaign and life in general?
Yeah. So with these sorts of questions, I almost have to think back a bit to before the race, because I've been, working and going to school full time on top of running. So I haven't had a whole lot of free time. But what I do like to do is, if you couldn't tell from me mentioning that I'm, sort of considering going to seminary, I'm a theology nerd. And as you knew from before the show, popping up my Lutheran Small Catechism to get my microphone all set. So I love reading theology, philosophy, history. I play quite a few instruments. I was big into music theory and things like that for a while. I really wanted to be in a band and make that my career a little bit back in the day. And so I enjoy playing music. I love reading. whenever I do have the spare time between work and school and campaigning to do those things. And also, as you could probably imagine, for my campaign, in terms of the naturalist aspect, I love, road tripping and getting out up into the woods in Northern California, Oregon, Idaho. Idaho is one place I've had on my mind a little bit when it comes to if I ever have to leave California and I don't have a choice. Northern Idaho is beautiful. I love just getting out into those sorts of environments. Yeah.
Joey, any last questions from you before we wrap up?
Yeah. So bringing it, for my last question, bringing it back to your platform, the lifestyle liberty. How do you think, I guess, so like if it comes to like Reagan's three-legged stool, I'm definitely more in the like socially conservative viewpoint, but libertarians were a part of his stool, and I agree with libertarians a lot. How, like in our polarized time, can kind of that aspect of your like lifestyle liberty, right, and making sure that you're standing firmly for religious liberty, but also allowing for the fact that we live in a pluralistic democracy and some adults are going to live differently than how I think they ought to, or whatever. How can that focus and that kind of focus on the fusionism calm some of our divides so that we're not, at each other's throats?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, aside from working with the GOP, I also have had history in the Libertarian Party. And what I saw while the Libertarian Party was before the Reno Reset and those sorts of things, if you've been following the Libertarian Party by any chance, we had an environment in the party that there were individuals all across the cultural spectrum that could get along remarkably well. That's one of the things that attracted me to the party at first and initially made me more active in the Libertarian Party than the GOP. I mean, I had friends who were like in the LP New Hampshire type libertarians. If you've seen any other stuff on Twitter, like hardcore, culturally conservative, and then there were individuals in the party who identified as transgender and things like that. And they were talking to each other. They were getting along. There was positive discourse. It was the strangest thing because you see these individuals from all across the political spectrum that the system wants these individuals to absolutely despise each other. But fundamentally, what they agreed on was that you're an adult, I'm an adult. Perhaps the libertarians were a bit more conservative than progressives on cultural policy, and that we want to keep children out of these issues. The GOP has made, the Libertarian Party has made plenty of principles on, or plenty of statements on, not allowing gender transition surgeries for minors, not allowing HRT for minors. We agree that children are out of the question. They don't have the legal or the natural right, so to speak, to engage in these sorts of activities. So we're just approaching each other as adults. We have different lifestyles, different views. Let's debate them. Let's discuss them. But we don't have to be scared at the end of the day that one or the other wants to force their lifestyle on everyone or force their lifestyle on my children. Because they knew that in this libertarian circle, everyone believed in that principle of live and let live and believed in, keeping children out of the issue and things like that. So that I'd like to see that environment be replicated within California, because this is California is known as just, massively progressive state, but we have individuals all across the board culturally here, very radical in each direction. And if we want the state to be politically and culturally cohesive and break down some of that division that has affected our mental health, our family lives, the cultural discourse, we need to bring some of that real libertarian live and let live mentality into the legislation we apply to individuals. So as I say in my platform, my stance is that every adult individual, if you're a mentally healthy adult individual, you should be able to, my stance or my principle when any legislation comes across me would be that if you're a mentally well adult individual, it's your life, it's your property, it's your body, you do what you want to do with cultural issues. And that's a principle I'd use in approaching all sorts of legislation. Of course, when we mention personal liberty or bodily autonomy, the issue of abortion always comes up. Now, I'm a traditional Anglican, so you could imagine my position on the issue of abortion. But in the state of California, abortion is written into our state constitution, and the Democrats use it as a wedge issue. And absolutely, if I made abortion front and center on my policy agenda, I'd have absolutely no chance of getting these moderates independence. So my main thing I advocate for when it comes to abortion policy in the state of California is I believe at the very least, and I believe this is a very sane, moderate view, yet some Democrats think this is far too conservative. But I believe that at the very least, pro-life voters and pro-life citizens in the state of California shouldn't have their taxpayer dollars used to fund elective abortions. It's very simple. And individuals across the political divide should be able to see that pro-life individuals have good faith arguments against abortion, and that they should not have to fund what they believe is murder. That would be a good step, I believe, in getting our state on the right track to abortion policy, and I believe that would also potentially qualm division in some regards in the state. But as I said, if you could imagine, as a traditional Anglican, you could imagine what would happen if policy came across my desk that said, let's just ban abortion statewide in the state of California. You could imagine how I'd vote on that. But when it comes to what I'm advocating for my policy platform and how that applies to lifestyle liberty and things like that, I really want to focus on what's possible, and that is making sure, at least possible within the next few years, and that's making sure pro-life citizens don't have to fund abortions. That's my main issue going forward.
All right, brother. Thank you very much for being on the show. Let them know where they can find your party platform, your website, and any way to contact you. One last time.
Yeah, like I said earlier, you can read about my full platform, who I am, the mission of my campaign at www.mack, M-A-C-K, for statesenate.com, for spelled F-O-R, not for the number, so mackforstatesenate.com. And then my Twitter handle is at Elijah, F-O-R-C-A, Elijah for California. And then my Facebook account is Elijah Mack, and if it has a shorthand handle, it's probably the same as my Twitter. Then on YouTube, you can find me and all my campaign ads at just Elijah Mack on YouTube.
All right, brother. Thank you very much, and we'll be keeping an eye on the race. And when you become president of the United States, remember the Gio and Joey show.
Will do.
Right.
You can have me on again. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, brother. Hang on there after it goes dark.